Merry Christmas, everyone! Apparently this is a Christmas episode. I don't do that, but nevertheless I'm doing that because this video is called Christmas Message to Atheists and the Non-Religious, from a channel called The Education Grandpa. Now, I have this extension installed that shows me the tags on videos, and for some reason, all the tags are like Gen Z, iGen, which is a book that complains about Gen Z, at least from what I can gather from the description, and the Entitled Generation and Dr. Ernie Zara. Dr. Ernie Zara being this guy, and the Entitled Generation, which is his own book complaining about Zoomers that you'll see behind him for the entire video. I'm not sure, but I feel like this guy might have a chip on his shoulder about the youth. Will any of that have anything to do with this video? I don't know. I don't see why it would, but he plastered it all over the place, so I thought it was at least worth a mention. Anyway, ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas message.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Grandpa. Can I have $500? I'm feeling very entitled today.
The Education Grandpa here with you today.
Still here for another day, huh? That's good. You keep on kicking there, Grandpa.
Just bringing you a Christmas greeting, Christmas message.
Well, that's nice. You could have mailed me a card, but Canada Post has been on strike for like a month. It'd be faster if you sent it through Santa.
And I'm going to go after this message and present it from a different perspective. I want to go after it from the position of an atheist.
Oh, wait, you're an atheist? Or you're gonna, like, LARP as an atheist for the message? What are you talking about, Grandpa? You have Grace Christian Academy written on your chest.
Or the non-religious person who just wants to ignore the stories and teachings of Scripture as I believe is truth.
I don't get this. Why are you coming at this from the perspective of a person who doesn't believe the thing that you believe? What's that going to accomplish? I should not be experiencing this much confusion this few seconds into your video, but here we are.
So, if that's the position that an atheist takes...
No, it's the position that you take. You just said that. Unless that's not actually what you meant to say and you're just tripping over yourself, which I think is probably the case. So with that in mind, let me just go back and listen once more to what you said to make sure that I'm on the same page here.
I want to go after it from the position of an atheist or the non-religious person who just wants to ignore the stories and teachings of Scripture as I believe is truth. So if that's the position that an atheist takes, this raises a dilemma, particularly with their celebrations of the major holidays of Christendom.
Yeah, of course there are some atheists who do ignore the stories of Christendom, or Christianity more appropriately. There are plenty of Christians who do too, but that's not my position, and it's not a position you're going to find many people holding in this space. I don't ignore your stories at all, nor does anyone who watches content like mine, or for that matter, like yours. They're very unlikely to be happening across this kind of work out of pure apathy. Now, if they're atheists, of course they don't believe at least the theistic aspects of the stories, but that's not what you said. I feel like we're not off to a very good start when the beginning of your message is you mischaracterizing the people your message is supposedly addressed to. What beneficial outcome do you foresee that having, Ernie? Or sorry, Dr. Z, as I'm helpfully informed by the preview of your book? Or I should say pamphlet, considering that it's 131 pages, including the About the Author page. It costs 44 Canadian dollars. Jesus, I know the Canadian dollar's not doing so hot, but that's a lot of money for that many pages, Dr. Z. Those things better be made of gold or something. But maybe that's just my entitlement showing through. I'm not a Zoomer, I'm a millennial, but I'm sure I wouldn't escape the judgment unscathed either. Listen, Zoomers, we had to hear the same shit growing up. When I was growing up, the entire social attitude was that millennials are lazy, entitled, useless idiots. And that's kind of what I hear about Zoomers now. And in fact, I think it's always kind of that way for young people. I think it was the same for Gen X, too. But I see a lot of promise in the Zoomers, frankly. They're starting to really take over internet spaces, and in a lot of them, I see a lot of creativity and skill and intelligence that's pretty impressive. I think there's a lot of raw material there for a lot of achievement going forward. And maybe that achievement will take forms that the previous generations won't exactly understand. Oh well. Improve yourself and do cool stuff for its own sake. And if people still want to say this tired nonsense, let them. They still say that stuff about my generation, and you know what? It just doesn't matter anymore. We got lives and stuff to do. Who cares about them?
Instead of celebrating the reasons and historical origins of the holidays, atheists tell me they just substitute stories in place of that.
Okay, I guess some people would do that, but I don't really see the reason why. Christmas is just the culturally recognized label that we put on the winter feasts that we have with our families. It doesn't need a story. It's just a way to take the coldest, worst time of the year and make it suck a little bit less. If we agree to do the thing because we like the vibes and we see the value in it, then we have a very functional family holiday. No more need be said.
In other words, the cultural part of it takes precedence. For example, inserting Santa and flying reindeer instead of Jesus, in my mind, is still celebrating a Christian holiday, whether it's admitted or not.
Admitted? Look, I don't think anyone's dumb enough to be under the illusion that Christ's Mass is not a Christian holiday, at the very least in name. There's no admission involved, as if I'm under interrogation and I've finally cracked and confessed to my crimes. We in the West live in a culture, of course, heavily immersed in Christianity historically and presently. It's not some big revelation that a lot of our festivals tend to be rooted in that Christian history, at least in the incarnations they've had for a very long period of time at this point. You mentioned Santa, and of course even Santa is a Christian figure. He's called Saint Nick for a reason. If someone tells you, yeah, I celebrate Christmas, but I swap out the animals in the manger for the animals pulling the sleigh, and therefore it's no longer related to the Christian holiday, that's obviously just silly. Maybe some people do silly things like that. I don't know. What does that have to do with atheists celebrating holidays in general? We live in the culture we live in. We can participate in our society's traditions regardless of what we literally believe. Being an atheist does not require you to reject your entire society and culture, although some Christians seem to think it should, which is a position I can't for the life of me understand. I don't see how encouraging people to toss away all aspects of anything remotely related to Christianity as soon as they stop believing the literal truth of the religion does anything at all for Christianity in the long run in terms of retaining its cultural relevance. I think that's probably extremely corrosive, in fact. That type of attitude probably contributes heavily to the social change that Christians tend to whine about, well beyond trivialities like holidays.
Inserting Easter bunnies and eggs instead of addressing the true meaning of Easter in Resurrection Sunday is still celebrating the Christian holiday of Easter.
Really? Because according to Bede, at least, in the Reckoning of Time from the 8th century, the name Easter has its roots in the name of a Germanic pagan goddess, Eostre. Pronunciation, ? Whatever. And the bunny rabbits and the eggs very likely have their roots in pagan fertility symbols, because eggs make babies and bunnies make lots of babies. So here's the question. You take what's basically the Christian analog of Passover, as seen from its other name, Pascha, you wrap it in trappings of Germanic paganism, and then you tell me that if I get together with my family and eat some turkey on that day, followed by a few chocolate eggs, what I'm actually celebrating is exclusively Christian and open to no other interpretation. And this makes sense to you? In what way?
Well, celebration of a Christian holiday without Christ is like celebrating a birthday without a birth.
Pretty ironic, considering that the chances of Jesus actually having been born on December 25th are negligibly low. So Christmas is celebrating Jesus' birthday without a birth.
You'd have to submit an alternate meaning to that day.
By which I can only assume you mean stop calling it Christ Mass and call it something else, right? And give it a different meaning. Because otherwise, whether we admit it or not, we're celebrating a Christian holiday without Christ, and that's as absurd as celebrating a birthday without a birth, and so we must change the name and make it about something else. So what is this? Some kind of a territorial dispute? Trying to convince people to stop using your words? Okay, if you really prefer happy holidays to Merry Christmas, I guess have it your way. I don't care all that much. I mean, for me, Christmas is just an excuse to get together with the family, eat some good food, get the kids some presents, have her have a nice day that she can look forward to, and have some nice peaceful chilled out time with her grandparents and her parents. Or if we're in Italy, these horrific monsters. Again, it's about the vibes, right? So yeah, you want me to stop calling it Christmas? Give the Christians back their words and delete their entire cultural cachet in the rest of society? Alright then. So what do you prefer that I call the winter gathering that regardless I'm still gonna celebrate? Do you prefer that I use one of the other available names for a winter festival? And if so, which one? Happy holidays, or rather just the holidays, like I said? Well, probably not. I would venture a guess that you're the type who might have a problem with that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Something boring like just the winter solstice? It's kind of lacking a bit. Maybe Saturnalia? Well, I don't have any Roman ancestry. Maybe it'd feel a little LARPy, but my wife has it, so it could work. But who cares if people think I'm LARPy? So how about Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, the actually December 25th festival of the Roman sun god Sol Invictus? Or Toji? Dongji, or maybe Newtonmas, to celebrate the fact that Isaac Newton, unlike Jesus, actually was born on December 25th. Or maybe Yalda, or Hanukkah, or maybe Yule. I like that one. Oofta, can I ever feel a pull towards that one? Maybe that's my northern blood calling me back to Odin Yule further. That's a creepy one there. I'm gonna have to think about that one. Or look, Christmas is on Wednesday this year. I could just call it Wednesday if you like. It doesn't matter. It's just when you live in a country that has some sort of a common tradition, it's also kind of useful to have some kind of a commonly understood name for stuff. In this case, for the general time frame of the winter solstice that people with European backgrounds, as well as some other people, tend to celebrate, and which we tend to celebrate with a characteristic set of aesthetics and particular traditions that kind of just accreted over time and really fundamentally don't have a great deal to do with Christianity as such, and which are recognized and appreciated by all of us, and which none of us are especially eager to give up on the demand of someone else. But beyond all that, if the Christians really did invent the idea of celebrating around the time of the winter solstice, or celebrating around the time of the spring equinox, or celebrating any other time of the year, if this was exclusively and only a Christian invention, and historically we'd only celebrated this because our families were Christian in the past, or because they still are, if that's the case, does that somehow invalidate it? Again, the suggestion seems to be that you must completely divorce all aspects of society that have anything to do with Christianity when you don't believe in the literal story of Christianity. But why? I'm still part of this culture, regardless of the origin of the holiday, regardless of the religious significance that Christians attach to the holiday, regardless of whatever historical significance it might have. It's still just a holiday in the culture I was born into, that I grew up celebrating with my non-Christian family on our own terms for our own reasons, which have a lot more to do with family and community spirit and so forth than they do with your religion. That's to a large part just how culture evolves. People change in how they engage with things, they change how they interpret things, what it means to them. This stuff has already changed over the centuries, and like it or not, it's going to keep happening. Is there some problem with this, and if so, why? I'm not really understanding it. It's like saying Christians shouldn't celebrate birthdays because celebrating birthdays was invented by pagans, which was the perspective of Christians for several hundred years, and in fact still is among some, such as Jehovah's Witnesses. And maybe likewise, Christians should never schedule or do anything on any day named after a pagan god. This seems to be your standard, right? Stay in your lane, engage in no way with anything named after anything that you don't strictly believe, even if that name to you is just a cultural relic. Genius-level social thinking. It's absolutely incredible. You have a book behind you called The Entitled Generation, and then you feel entitled to instruct people in what celebrations they should be engaging in and why.
So what does the atheist say then to his or her children once they're grown?
About Christmas? The same thing as they say when they're not grown? Oh, it's Christmas again. That's cool, I guess.
Once they realize the alternate stories that they are presented for these holidays are mere myths in their mind.
Oh, you mean like if I tell them the reason that we do Christmas is because Santa Claus and the reindeer are real. So if I'm a gigantic moron who frames Christmas for my children as being literally about nothing else other than the actual existence of Santa Claus. Well, I don't know, Dr. Z. I don't know what I would say. I guess if the kid turned 25 and realized Santa doesn't exist and came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, I found out Santa Claus doesn't exist, and that's literally the only reason that we sit down together and eat a nice meal and open presents on Christmas, so shouldn't we not do that anymore?" I guess I'd either have to try to explain some other reason why we actually do it, or be like, yeah, that actually is literally the only reason, and I guess that's gone now, so let's not do that anymore. Which makes you wonder what happens when people insist to their kids that Jesus is literally the only reason they do Christmas, and then the kids stop believing in that.
I can hear it now. Mom, Dad, if Santa and the Easter Bunny are not real, why are we still celebrating the holidays that are based on those characters?
Yeah, see? Your kid's an adult. You said, what are you going to tell your kids when they're adults? Your kid's like, "Mom, Dad, Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny aren't real. I just found this out as an adult human being." And Christmas and Easter are based on those characters, the same way St. Patrick's Day is based on the guy from the Lucky Charms box. I find the idea that you think this is a scenario that would actually happen so funny.
Their parents would have to say, yeah, they're myths. But then what about the holiday?
What about it? If you like it, just do it. But what about the holiday? I'll lose my holiday. No, you won't. You clearly are upset about losing it. There's something else about it that you like. That's a reason to do it. So do it then. There you go. Why do atheists celebrate Christmas? How can an atheist celebrate Christmas? Puzzle solved. This isn't some grand mystery, Ernie. It doesn't take 1,000 IQ to figure this one out.
Well, don't atheists already agree the virgin birth and resurrection are myths themselves.
Yeah, and some of those atheists have Christian parents, believe it or not. So what are those Christian parents going to tell them? Seems like this rough conversation about Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny that you're imagining the atheist having to have is a conversation some Christian parents actually do have to have, because actual practical social reasons for celebrating something together weren't established firmly enough, and it was all built upon the shifting sand of a myth.
Then why celebrate the holiday based on myths?
Yeah, that would be the obvious question, wouldn't it?
Why not simply celebrate the myths they avoid, rather than push the narratives of secularized meanings of the holidays in question?
You just got done saying why celebrate based on myths, and then you turned around and said, so celebrate based on this myth. You missed your own point. Why not just not celebrate myths? Celebrate real things. Your family isn't a myth. The get-together isn't a myth. The pretty lights aren't a myth. Looking outside and seeing the snow on the trees isn't a myth. Just enjoy the time. Celebrate the good things in life, the things that you appreciate. Celebrate something real. Why insist on pretending fiction is real? Why base it on myth intentionally in such a way that as soon as the myth is exposed for what it is, the entire thing falls apart and nobody wants to participate anymore? What's the point of that? You're suggesting taking one stupid approach and replacing it with the same stupid approach, just about a different character.
Adults should be honest, even if the implications of their honesty surrounding the holidays is really discomforting.
Okay, Ernie, then we're waiting. Go ahead, tell that kid the truth about Jesus. But yeah, I never did the Santa thing. Santa is kind of like a aesthetic theme. I'm not really interested in the whole tell the kid Santa's real stuff. Frankly, all I did was just not really mention it. And then eventually the kid was like, hey, is Santa not real? And I was like, oh, yeah. And it was the first time I recall hearing that she actually believed in that. It's incredible what kids pick up from their friends. But, I don't really have a problem with the Santa thing as such. Some people have this real hang-up about it, like parents should always be 100% honest. You shouldn't lie about it. And I don't think kids generally take it that way. It's just a little bit of fun. It's not a big deal. At least it's not that German guy who comes along and chops off your thumb if you suck it, right?
Atheists want their cake and eat it too.
Hey, it's Christmas, all right? If I want to eat a cake and also have a cake, I can do that. Probably better for my health if I don't eat them both anyway.
Wish that was easy for all of us to do.
I gotta say, I have no idea what you think is not easy about any of this. All you gotta do is talk to your kid like an actual human being. Don't be a gigantic doofus. My kid's inching her way up to 10 years old. She knows Santa's not real. She knows the Easter Bunny isn't real. And she knows your stories aren't true. And there's zero issue with it. She's just like, yay, Christmas, that'll be nice. I like the stuff we do then. Why would any of this have to be built on fake stories? Does every aspect of human existence have to be based on fake stories for some reason? Why would anyone accept that as a requirement? You haven't even given one reason for this yet. You're an educator, right? Educate me.
But especially on birthdays, they like to have it that way.
On birthdays? What do you mean by that?
Here's what I mean by that.
Oh, good.
On our birthdays, we had nothing to do with our conception or our birth. We were just there. Not our choice. So did the stork then bring atheists into the world?
Wait, so nobody had any choice in their birth, and if that's the case, then the stork brought atheists into the world? Or it somehow increases the likelihood that the stork brought atheists into the world? What are you talking about?
I mean, if our individual lives are real to the atheist...
As opposed to what?
Then why not the baby Jesus' life real to his parents?
If there was a baby Jesus, I'm sure his life was very real to his parents. Parents tend to regard their babies as real. What are you trying to get at here, Ernest?
Or maybe the stork brought him too.
The stork is less ridiculous than the Christian assertion. You haven't really earned that chuckle, but why are you talking as if the stork is a proposition under consideration here? Nobody said anything about storks but you.
I have an idea for the atheist that enjoys substituting alternate meanings, the special days. Drop the birthday and refer to it as Stork Day.
Okay, so just to clarify the point I think you're trying to make, you're saying atheists celebrate Christmas without Christ, and that's just like celebrating a birthday without a birth. And I guess that extends to, therefore, atheists actually believe that there are no births, for some reason. I guess because we apparently don't believe in the birth of Jesus, even though most of us do, myself included. I think he was a real person, most likely. But no, apparently that's not possible or something, so that means atheists celebrate Christmas despite there not having been a birth, which means we must celebrate all birthdays without there being any birth, which I guess must mean we don't believe in the occurrence of birth at all. If we believe that one birthday doesn't refer to an actual birth, no birthdays can refer to an actual birth for unstated, unknown reasons, which therefore I guess must mean atheists believe in the only alternative, which is the stork. And therefore atheists should stop celebrating birthdays and celebrate stork days, because otherwise we're unrealistically trying to have two contradictory things at once. We're trying to have our cake and eat it too. I think that's the general outline of the pseudo-argument that you're trying to make. But, obviously none of that is the case. The fact that atheists celebrate Christmas despite not believing in the resurrection of Christ doesn't mean they celebrate birthdays without believing birth happens. This strange idea that you have that if you don't believe the literal meaning of some event, you have to make up some alternative myth for it, applies well enough to Christmas, I suppose, with regard to atheists, but it doesn't apply to birthdays. So why are you using birthdays as an example as if that clarifies anything? It's really strange and unhelpful. It's pretty much just going to confuse everyone who listens to it.
Drop the birthday and refer to it as Stork Day. It's more inclusive.
More inclusive? So this is supposed to be analogous to celebrating Christmas without believing in God. And you're saying, hey, do the thing that's more inclusive, as if that's the motivating reason why people celebrate Christmas as atheists. I think you're confusing your complaints about Christmas with the usual Christian complaints about happy holidays. Maybe. I don't know.
Drop the birthday and refer to it as Stork Day. It's more inclusive, especially to the secular masses.
What? Secularism is not believing people are not born and instead are delivered by stork. This video is completely off the rails at this point.
Your kids will totally understand your consistency on this part.
I don't think they'll understand a damn thing about this. I don't think anyone would understand this. Do you understand this? Consistency? Consistency of what with what? I mean, I guess of having a different interpretation of Christmas, substituting in a different meaning for it, with substituting in different meanings into every random event in the entire year. Why would that occur? Christmas is a very particular kind of situation. It doesn't apply to everything, but why would that be done? Reinterpreting Christmas and celebrating it for a different reason is a thing with some sort of relevance to atheism or secularism or whatever. But why would that apply to an already completely secular event like a birthday? As if atheists don't believe people get born. I think your brain is broken or something.
Explain away where babies come from by simply using the stork.
Why would this come up on somebody's birthday? Is this a thing you do with your family? You sit down on your birthday and talk about how you make babies? And if you do, well, the stork stuff is associated a lot more with Christian prudes than it is with atheists. My head is spinning right now, man. Anyway, I got a couple other things to say about the stork thing, and I don't really know where to put it, so I'll put it right here. If there were actually a person who was of the opinion that birth really is not a thing, and in fact the stork does bring babies, in our culture that person would probably still just use the word birthday for people's birthdays, because everyone gets the point of what cultural event it's referring to. Trying to use a different word would just be annoying and for the most part pointless. If a lot of people started believing in the stork instead, it would still probably hang on for quite a while in the language, just because that's the word and people don't really associate it that strongly with the mechanics of birth. In the same way that probably a lot of atheists are like me and don't really associate Christmas that strongly with Christianity. There really isn't a lot of pressure to change words like this unless a person has some kind of alternative ideological commitment that's strong enough to make the name change seem really meaningful and important and worth the trouble, which I, for one, in the case of Christmas, really just don't. And I don't know if storkists would either. I also just find it really fascinating how you seem to be arguing that every celebration that anyone ever has is required by the nature of being a celebration to be based on a myth. When you talk about birthdays, you're treating birth as the current myth and saying that anyone who doesn't believe in birth can't just keep on doing the celebration for its own sake because it's useful and pleasant, but they have to redefine it by swapping in a different myth in its place, the stork. It's just a fascinating state of mind that you seem to be in. You seem desperate to base everything on some kind of a story, and it doesn't make any sense to me as an approach. We are very divided on this issue. This obsession with stories seems to me like a quintessential aspect of religion, and I just don't share it, or even understand what the point of it is supposed to be. Celebrations don't have to be about stories. Really, nothing you do does. If you're celebrating with a group of people, that's a social bonding ritual that's considered meaningful by the people involved, considered considered valuable, and its value basically comes from its social utility, in reinforcing the connections between those people. What it's nominally based on really doesn't have a lot of significant impact on its value. Even for Christians, I think, Christmas isn't really about Jesus. The value they get out of it might be partially some kind of religious feeling, but I don't think that's the primary aspect. I think what they get out of it largely is the same thing we do. It provides an opportunity to focus on a particular aspect of family or friendship or community more broadly, and it's made rare enough and hyped up enough through the aesthetic of the season that it really feels like a special event to look forward to and to remember. And of course, that's especially the case for the kids who haven't experienced it very often and who are usually centered in it. And of course, I'm talking about Christmas and Easter and birthdays here. Anyway, go on.
No need to really think about the point of origin of anything like birth or conception or, heaven forbid, to talk about sex.
I'm sorry, you want me to spend my kid's birthday talking about sex? Is that what you're telling me right now? Okay, I'll pass, but thank you. If you think for some reason that makes me somehow irrational, I'm okay with that.
But consider this. But as for you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, too little to be among the clans of Judah.
And suddenly he decides to go off on a 2-minute tangent about stuff from the Bible that has no apparent useful connection to anything we're talking about. So we're just going to kind of ignore the existence of that and get on to the end.
Rather than Merry Mythmas, as some atheists might want to call this holiday.
Could use some work.
Merry Miracle Christmas.
That could use some work too, doesn't really roll off the tongue. What if we shorten Merry Miracle Christmas to something a little punchier, like Merry Christmas? I'm a marketing genius.
Have a great family celebration.
Now there's a name. Maybe you're the genius, Dr. Z. A great family celebration to all, and to all a good night.
And try not to work in those alternate meetings. Your kids will love you for it later.
Yeah, because then they won't stop believing in the myths of those alternate meanings and be crippled in their ability to celebrate holidays. And so they should make sure to stick with talking about Christmas as only relevant because of Jesus and no other reason. But, did you forget that you made this entire video to speak to atheists? Atheists, and very likely the kids of atheists later in life, already don't believe Jesus is real. That myth is already broken. So why would we use that as the basis for celebrating Christmas? How does that fix the problem you're complaining about? The problem that you insist exists with basing Christmas on myths like Santa Claus. If atheists base it on Jesus, that's exactly the same, and whatever the consequences of that are, they're the same. So why are you advocating that people do the same thing you were just admonishing them for minutes ago? Did you put in 1 second of thought before you turned the webcam on?
Merry Christmas.
Alright, dude, weird video. As a youngin' almost, I'm entitled to better than this. I demand better YouTube Christian videos. Okay, thank you for watching. If you would, before you go, please do give the video a like and click subscribe if you haven't. And if you like the channel, maybe consider supporting. A few bucks a month is enormously helpful, and huge thanks to all of my supporters who've already made that choice. Early access email list, list.logicked.com. Happy Yule, and I'll see you next time.